The day my husband told me he would marry another wife, the sun was bright, but my heart felt dark. He stood in the sitting room with his arms folded, his voice hard like a stone. "You need to learn respect," he said. "Maybe when another woman enters this house, you will know you are not the only one." I looked at the floor so he would not see my tears. I did not want to cry in front of him. My chest felt tight, like a rope was around it. My hands were cold even though the day was hot. I wanted to ask, is this how love should be? But I knew he would not listen. He had already decided. That night, I did not sleep well. I turned on my mat again and again. The ceiling fan hummed, but the sound did not calm me. I thought of many things. I thought of the early days of our marriage, when we used to walk to the market together, sharing roasted corn and laughing. I thought of the days after, when the laughter became small and the shouting became loud. I thought of how I learned to count the quiet as a blessing, because quiet meant no trouble. If he wants to marry another woman, let him, I told myself in the darkness. I only pity the woman who will enter this house. I hope she can bear it. I hope she can survive his temper. Morning came. The sky was soft and pale. I wiped my face, tied my wrapper, and swept the compound. I cooked simple food, even though I had no appetite. I told myself, be strong. Do not break. Days passed. Then one afternoon, a car horn sounded at the gate. My heart jumped. I wiped my hands on my wrapper and went to open it. There she stood, Rachel. She was younger than me. She had soft cheeks and eyes that looked like they could smile even before her lips did. She wore a simple dress and carried a small bag. In her hand was a plate covered with a white cloth. "Good afternoon, sister," she said, and she bent her knees a little, the way our people do when they greet with respect. She held out cola nuts to me. "Please, make this house comfortable for me." I blinked. "Sister." The word felt strange and warm at the same time. "Yes," she said, smiling in a way that was not proud or fake. "You came first, so you deserve my respect." Something moved in my chest, like a locked door cracking open. I took the cola nuts with both hands. "You are welcome," I said. My voice shook, but I was not afraid. I was surprised. I had expected a fight from the first minute. I thought she would march inside and look at me like I was a rival. But she did not. She came with a soft voice and a calm face. I showed her the kitchen. I showed her where to keep her water. I showed her the big pot for Sunday rice and the small pot for quick soup. We both laughed when she tried to lift the heavy mortar. "Leave that one," I said. "It is stubborn." In the evening, we cooked together. We cut vegetables on a wooden board. We talked about simple things, the price of tomatoes, the best way to cook yam so it is soft but not broken, which market woman sells clean fish. She called me sister again and again, and each time it felt like medicine. My husband walked in as we set the table. He looked at the two of us side by side. His eyes were sharp and cold. He nodded, but his face did not change. I kept quiet. Rachel kept quiet too. We served him food. He ate and left his plate without a word. The next day, we swept the compound together. We sang a small song, just above whispers. We washed clothes and pegged them on the line. We took turns stirring the pot of soup. When one hand got tired, the other hand took over. It was like we had been sisters for a long time. I did not trust it at first. I kept waiting for trouble to start. But no trouble came. One afternoon, we were in the kitchen making puff-puff. The oil sizzled and the sweet smell filled the room. Rachel told me a funny story about how she once added salt instead of sugar when she was a little girl. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind I had not felt in months. The laughter surprised me. It felt like rain on dry ground. Then I noticed a shadow at the doorway. My husband stood there, watching. His face was dark like a storm cloud. "So this is how you spend your time now," he said. His voice was low but hot. "Instead of competing for my love and attention, the best you can do is befriend your competitor." The laughter died in my throat. I could feel the room grow smaller. He stepped into the kitchen and looked at Rachel. "Stand up," he ordered. "Since you will not obey me, I will teach you a lesson." I wanted to speak, but my mouth would not open. My feet felt stuck to the floor. I remembered other days when his anger had filled this house. I remembered the way a raised hand can be louder than a shout. Fear tried to climb into my chest again. Rachel stood slowly. She did not shake. She did not shout. She simply stood, straight like a tree. "I am not your enemy," she said in a calm voice. "I will not fight your first wife. I will not fight your peace. But I will not accept harm." My husband's eyes blazed. His hand rose, the same hand that had risen many times before. The air in the kitchen seemed to stop moving. The hot oil bubbled, and a puff-puff turned brown and floated to the side of the pan. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, like it was also holding its breath. He took one quick step toward her. Rachel's eyes did not leave his face. Her body moved like water, smooth, sure. Before his hand could land, she reached out and caught his wrist. It happened so fast that I gasped. He tried to pull away, but her grip was firm. She was not big. She did not look strong. But there was a quiet power in her arms, the kind that comes from knowing when to stand. "Stop," she said. Just one word. He tried to speak, but no sound came. Rachel took a small step to the side, turned her body, and lifted his arm. It was like she was moving a heavy door with the right key. In one clean motion, she shifted her weight and, before I could even say her name, she flipped him. The thud when he hit the floor shook the house. The spoon in the pot rattled against the side. A plate on the shelf trembled. I stood there, my hand over my mouth, my heart beating fast, like drums at a festival, but the sound was not joyful. It was shock. It was freedom trying to breathe. For a moment, everything was quiet. My husband lay on the floor, his eyes wide, his face pale. He looked at his hand like it had betrayed him, like it did not obey him anymore. He tried to get up. His pride tried to help him. But his hands shook. Rachel did not move closer. She did not raise her voice. She only stood straight and strong, like the trunk of a palm tree. "If you ever touch either of us again," she said, her voice steady, "I will beat you until you cannot stand." The words hung in the air like a bell after it is struck, clear, ringing, impossible to ignore. My husband's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He found no words. I looked at Rachel. She did not look proud. She did not look happy. She looked like a person who had chosen a line she would not cross and would not let anyone cross it either. The clock ticked again. The oil hissed softly. Outside, a bird called, as if nothing big had happened. But something big had happened. Something had broken. Something had changed shape. My husband pushed himself up on one elbow. He stared at the floor. Then he staggered to his feet and held the wall for balance. His eyes did not meet mine. They did not meet Rachel's. He walked out of the kitchen, his steps heavy, and the whole house seemed to feel his shame. We listened to his footsteps fade. We heard the front door open. We heard the gate slam, loud, angry, embarrassed. I let out the breath I had been holding. My legs felt weak. I leaned on the counter and looked at Rachel. She looked back at me, calm and quiet. For a small second, I felt afraid of her strength. Then, just as quickly, I felt safe because of it. The puff-puff floated in the oil, golden brown, perfect. The house was still shaking in my memory. My heart was still fast. Rachel picked up the slotted spoon and lifted the puff-puff out of the oil, letting the oil drip back into the pot. She placed the sweet round balls on a tray lined with paper. "Are you okay, sister?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Tears filled my eyes, not from pain this time, but from relief that felt strange and new. I nodded and wiped my face with the back of my hand. The kitchen smelled like sugar and heat. The air felt different, like after a heavy rain when the dust settles and the world looks clean. I did not know what tomorrow would bring. I did not know what my husband would do next. But I knew this: the fear that had ruled this house had met its match. And then, in that quiet kitchen, with the oil still sizzling and the tray of puff-puff cooling, the sound of the gate echoed in my chest, and Rachel's words stood tall in the air: "If you ever touch either of us again, I will beat you until you cannot stand." The gate slammed so hard that the dust rose and hung in the air like little ghosts. For a moment, the house felt very big and very empty. My hands still smelled of oil and sugar. My heart still beat like a drum. I looked at Rachel. She stood calm, as if she had placed a smooth stone in the middle of a rushing river and the water had to move around it. We did not speak at once. The puff-puff on the tree cooled and made tiny clouds of steam. The clock on the wall continued to tick, steady and small. Outside, someone called the name of a child. Life went on. Inside our little kitchen, something else began to breathe again. It was a soft sound, hope learning to open its mouth. "Come," Rachel said at last. She pushed the tray toward me. "Let us finish." Her voice was gentle, not proud. She did not laugh or boast about what had happened. She only moved like a woman who knows the right thing to do. We ate the puff-puff slowly, as if every bite was a small repair on the heart. We drank warm tea. We dried the plates. The sun dipped low and painted the yard with long yellow fingers. No one knocked on the gate. No one came to ask what had happened. For now, the house kept its secret like a sleeping bird tucking its feathers tight. That night, I could not sleep at once. I lay on my mat and listened. The house made quiet sounds: the drip of a cup, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of a curtain. I thought about the first days with my husband. I thought about all the times I had stepped back so his anger would not hit me. I thought about the small wounds I had hidden and tried to sew back together by myself. My chest felt like a heavy basket. For years, I had carried that basket without showing it. Rachel slept in the room next to mine. I could hear the small creak of her bed as she lay down. I imagined her as a little girl once, learning to be brave. I wondered what story she had in her hands that made her able to lift my husband like a child and set him down like a toy. I wanted to know, but I was also afraid to ask. Some stories are sharp, they cut. Some stories are soft, they comfort. I did not know which she would tell. Morning came with the song of a rooster. I walked to the back of the house and drew water from the well. The world felt different. The air tasted fresher. The sun made a band of gold on the clay floor. I washed my face and looked at myself in the small mirror. I blinked hard. The lines around my eyes looked softer. It was not that I was beautiful in a new way. It was that my face seemed less tired. Rachel called me from the yard. "Sister," she said. "Come help me plant the peppers." We planted the small green plants together. Our fingers sank in the soil and came out dark and alive. We dug little holes and pressed the plants in like tiny babies. We covered them with earth and patted the ground. "They will grow strong," Rachel said. "We must water them every day." I smiled. I felt like the peppers, planted and cared for, not left alone to dry. The garden was small, but it gave the house a new heartbeat. Each morning, when I swept the compound, I looked at the small green leaves and felt brave. Neighbors began to notice. At first, they spoke quietly, like people who had seen a strange bird in the sky and did not know whether to call it good or bad. "Why is the house quiet?" they would ask. "Where is the shouting?" Old women who used to gossip at the well stared and shook their heads. Some thought Rachel had used magic. Some thought she had put a spell on my husband. Some said, maybe he is ashamed. Others said, maybe he is waiting to burst again. But the truth was simple. Rachel had not shamed him with words. She had not told the town his secrets. She had only stood when he lifted his hand. She had drawn a clear line. She refused to allow fear to live under her roof. Days turned into weeks. The heavy storms of shouting became fewer, and then they almost stopped. When my husband walked past us now, he kept his eyes low. He did not shout. He did not touch. Sometimes he avoided looking at us at all. His pride seemed to keep him small. Pride can be like a heavy stone, it makes you move slower and think less. One morning, he came into the kitchen with a paper in his hand. He did not slam the door. He did not raise his voice. He sat on the small stool and pushed the paper toward us. It was a list. On it were small things written in his careful hand: buy sugar, mend the roof, fix the fence. He looked at me and then at Rachel. He said nothing for a long time. Then he cleared his throat and said, in a voice that was not loud but not soft either, "Make sure the pepper seedlings get water." Rachel nodded and smiled a little. I felt something move inside me like the first warm wind in spring. It was not a grand apology. It was a piece of bread handed over. It was small, but it was real. Slowly, we all found new ways to live together. We set new rules in the house without anyone shouting them. "We do not hit," Rachel would say. "We do not use hands to hurt." Sometimes she would add, "We say how we feel with words." We learned to speak in soft voices when we were angry. We learned to take a small walk to cool our heads before talking. When my husband felt angry, he would go to the yard and sweep for a while. The act of sweeping made him breathe and count the dust as something he could move. I began to tell my own story a little more. I told Rachel about the small things that used to scare me. I told her about the times I stayed quiet though my heart wanted to shout. She listened with her head tilted, like someone drinking water. She did not say, "You should have done this." She said, "You did well to stay. You are stronger than you think." She told me about her mother, who once taught her to stand by a mango tree and say, "I will not let fear grow under my feet." Rachel said that her mother had been gentle and very brave. When Rachel was a child, she had learned to lift things with care and to speak with truth. I held her hand as she spoke. Her voice made a path inside me to a place where old fear could be left behind. There were hard days too. Sometimes the old habits tried to come back. Once, my husband slammed the plate when he thought his food was late. The plate did not break, but for a second the house felt like before. Rachel walked straight to him and took the broken silence and turned it into a question: "Are you hungry, or are you angry?" He did not answer. He put his head in his hands and then, slowly, he said, "Both." We gave him food and space. We gave him a broom and a chance to sweep his anger away. The neighbors stopped whispering about spells and started to talk about bravery. Young women would come by and ask how Rachel learned to be so calm. Old men nodded when they saw us planting peppers and said quietly, "True rule comes from quiet strength." One evening, not long after, my husband sat outside and watched the sun go. He called me to his side. My legs felt heavy like wet cloth. I joined him. He did not speak for a while. Then he looked at his hands and said, in a small voice, "I was wrong." It was not a long speech. It was not full of proud words. But it was honest. He said, "I thought fear would make you obey. I thought it would keep me in charge. But I was wrong." I did not throw his words away. I did not hug him straight away. Some wounds do not close with a single word. But I felt something inside myself softening. "Thank you for saying it," I said. "Words are seeds. They must be followed by good deeds." Rachel stood a little behind us, silent and steady. She did not need to be praised. Her work was done by being kind and firm at the same time. She had taught the house a new song. It was a simple song: no hitting, speak the truth, care for one another. Years later, when people asked me about that time, I would tell them this: strength is not the loud clap of a hand. Strength is the calm that keeps a child safe. Strength is a woman who will not allow fear under her roof. Respect is not forced. Respect is grown with care, like peppers in the sun. The peppers grew tall and strong. The house learned to sing again. And in the quiet that followed the storm, we found a home that was kinder and truer than the one we had before. Before you go, remember, more timeless tales await. Subscribe, like, and share AB Folktale Stories, where wisdom lives forever.